Hello and welcome. Generative AI is moving beyond the typical use cases, and increasingly, companies want the economics of Gen AI to work out. There are several other issues that the application and its use cases need to address as well. How could they be done? Well, Sid Sheth, CEO, and Sudeep Bhoja, CTO, and also the founders of Dmatrix, join us to talk about the opportunities. Gentlemen, welcome. First question, Sid and Sudeep, if I can address it to both of you. You both studied in India before moving to the US and building your own careers, successful careers in semiconductors and AI. What were those key moments in your journeys that led you to start the company and together?
Sudeep, you want to go first? I'll let
Yeah,
Sudeep go. Yeah.
yeah, sure. So I had a strong foundation in engineering, first starting at REC Calicut, what is now called National Institute of Technology in Calicut. And then subsequently, I went to the US to pursue my graduate schooling at Purdue University in electrical and computer engineering. Um, so I got interested in speech recognition, specifically around trying to get computers to recognize speech, and that was what my final year project was in my undergrad. And then after I finished graduate schooling, I went to work for a number of large semiconductor companies. I started off at Texas Instruments, then I worked at Lucent, Broadcom, and finally at Inphi. And so there, I've worked for more than 2 decades, understanding how to build semiconductors, how to work with you know team members to come up with solutions to very difficult problems, and then build a product and ship product, right? And so after that experience, we were looking. So Sid and I were working at Inphi for a number of years, and we saw the emergence of AI, right? Specifically around transformers in 2017, and we saw that the traditional way of building computers, of separating computer and memory, that existed from the early days, what's called the von Neumann classical computing methods that separated computer and memory, were no longer applicable, or are not as applicable to the new models and new AI algorithms that started showing up. And we realized very quickly that the process of moving data from memory into compute took so much energy, orders of magnitude more energy than the compute itself, that we needed to find a new way of doing things. And that's what Sid and I embarked on at Dmatrix, in trying to bring in what is called in-memory compute and technologies related to that to the market.
Sid, you'd like to tell about your story as well? And it just reminds me of,
Sure.
since you mentioned Texas Instruments, reminds me of the charged couple device, CCDs, and how they changed a lot of the devices that we use. But we'll try and talk about it. Sid, it's over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Asutosh, for doing this. My background is, I grew up I was born in Bombay, grew up in Ahmedabad, educated there. And, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So goes back, to both my paternal grandfather and my maternal grandfather. This goes back to the 1940s. Both left home at a pretty young age in their teens. Rural part of India, went to big cities. Eventually, learned the trade. In case of my paternal grandfather, he learned the trade of what it takes to. He was a paper delivery boy for a long time, and then he learned the trade of what it takes to actually be a paper distributor for various businesses, and eventually started his own firm. This was back in 1945, right? And so it's very successful for 40 plus years. My maternal grandfather, same thing. Learned the auto spare parts business, and eventually, had an auto, parts. As this was back, when India had foreign cars that were all imported because India was still not making its own indigenous cars, right? So everyone had quote unquote a foreign car, and you needed spare parts for those cars when the power went off. And so he had a distribution business that did that, and eventually built his own manufacturing plant. My dad was an entrepreneur too. Studied in the US in the 1960s, went back to India in the 70s, set up his own manufacturing plant. So I think entrepreneurship ran in the family. I don't think I had much of a choice, growing up around, my grandfathers and my father. So watching them, it was just a matter of time, what would excite me and what I would embark on as an entrepreneur. In the 1990s, I think when I was studying in Ahmedabad, similar story. I was working on a project that was AI plus speech recognition. I think AI was going through its nuclear winter. It had many nuclear winters, and the 1990s was not very different. So the place where most of the research happened around AI was in schools and colleges and research institutions, right? Because it had really not gone mainstream. So I had the opportunity to work on one such project around speech recognition. And after that, I went off to the US. Worked at Intel, but very quickly realized that I wanted to jump in and you know build a company, right, or at least learn how to build a company. So my first startup was in 2001. We were building connectivity chips for optical applications well before when people were talking optics and how to connect networks using optics.
Mhm.
That was a 10-year run, and that company ended up at Broadcom. And then after that, I went to Infi, which is where I crossed paths with Sudeep, and we built a business that essentially was incubated from zero and is currently running at about 3 billion in revenue. Was eventually acquired by Marvell Semiconductor in 2021 in a $10 billion acquisition. So very successful outcome for the team. But as part of that journey, as Sudeep was saying, we started seeing the emergence of AI, and a lot of the products that we were building at Infi were being used to connect at the time training computing clusters. Right, those clusters needed a lot of bandwidth because you're connecting thousands of chips to each other, and you need to connect them using very high speed bandwidth chips, which is what we were building. But that is what gave us an insight and a front row seat into
Mhm.
what is coming, right? And this was, when we saw that, it clearly felt like a tsunami is headed our way. And there were many problems that needed solving. And inference, which is now obviously the whole world is talking about it, was something that was highlighted to us as an opportunity that would be much much bigger than the training opportunity, right? And back then, most people didn't even know what the word inference meant, right? We would go into investor meetings and say we want to start an inference computing company building silicon, and they would be, what is inference, right? And we would have to educate them. Today it's a global word. Everyone is talking about it. The opportunity has grown in size to the trillions of dollars, right? Because all of humanity wants access to AI, and really the only way to get access is to use inference. So we find
Mhm.
ourselves really in the middle of a very large tectonic generational opportunity, which at the time when we started didn't feel like it would go on to be so big so fast, but
Mhm.
clearly it has. And a little bit of insight, a little bit of luck, maybe a lot of luck to get to this point. But here we are. Ours is a story of grit and determination. I wish I could say we saw this all and we were all visionaries and we figured it all out well in advance, but nothing like that. We just stuck it out. We had a thesis and we just stayed at it, and here we are.
So that was the time for Intel, and the entire world spoke about Intel Inside. And in your case, looks like it's entrepreneurship inside, if I may say so.
That's a
Okay,
good, good tag. Yeah, I'm going to use that, Asutosh.
most welcome, most welcome. Uh, so you left, say, senior roles at Infi and start Dmatrix during the times of COVID. There was uncertainty, and also before AI, if I may say so, had become mainstream. What convinced you that AI inference part of it, was the opportunity to bet on?
Yeah. Again, it's mostly a hunch, right, Asutosh? A lot of the best decisions, at least I've made in my life, have been on a strong hunch. right? Because data doesn't exist, right? If the data all existed and we could make a decision based on all the data, then not just us but many others would make the same decision, right? So when you're making a decision well in advance of what is likely to become a big opportunity, you have to make it on a hunch. And yes, there is, you have 20% of the data available, and you're trying to make a decision based on 20% data, not 80% data. So in our
Mhm.
case, it was exactly the same. We looked at everything on the horizon. We were clearly, as we stated earlier, right, had a front row seat to what was happening with AI. And I think, this is, talking to customers, peeling the onion, going back to first principles, and really understanding what is it that once you train all these models, because models were being trained at a certain velocity, right? They were getting bigger, they were becoming more capable. I'm talking about, back in 2018, 2019, it was pretty clear what the trajectory looked like. And if you extrapolate that trajectory out, it became very clear that at some point in the future, there will come a time when these models would become, sufficiently generic where, pretty much anyone will want to use them and they could do a lot with them, right? So
Mhm.
once you get to that point, what comes next? Well, the next thing is pretty logical. Everybody wants to use it, and when everyone wants to use it, that's when, inference really takes off. And in our mind, not everyone can train a model, but everybody, all of humanity wants to use AI, and that's inference, right? So that opportunity, logically speaking, has to be much, much greater, because
Mhm.
people want to use AI 24/7 and everyone wants to use AI 24/7. So the multiplicative effect of that technology would be, exponential when the capabilities were there for people to use it to do lots of different things, right? So we did not know when that would happen. So that was really the bet. It could have taken 5 years, it could have taken 10 years. There had been many nuclear winters in AI. It could have never happened, right? And the bet was that it would happen in an event horizon where it would be meaningful, for us as a company, where we could capitalize on it. And that is where the luck part comes in. It happened literally within like 3 years of us starting the company with ChatGPT. And that was really the, kind of the watershed moment for us, right?
So that AI inference, that focus on AI inference was at a time when most of the industry was focused on training. What did you both see that others missed? It, if you can take that question.
Sure. Go ahead, Sudeep.
Producing a model is very hard work, right? People have been trying to come up with very, very powerful AI models right from the 1950s, starting with Rosenblatt, and they weren't very successful for a long periods of time. Like Sid said, we went through a couple of nuclear winters. Finally, we started seeing around 2010s these deep neural nets starting to break the barriers. Speech recognition, was getting solved much better than before. Computer vision is pretty good, getting solved, and finally, language was getting solved through large language models. And so we saw the emergence of these powerful new models. By the time we started the company, we realized that the dominant algorithms at the time, what is called the transformer, had just been invented, and that doing inference on them had characteristics that made it very difficult for training accelerators to deliver low latency, deliver low power, deliver low cost. All of these things that required inference to scale was the reason we went and invested and built these technologies.
Mhm. Sid, would you like to add to that?
It is not a one size fits all, right? You can't really take a GPU and apply it for all inferencing needs. You do need dedicated solutions that will augment the GPU, or in certain cases be much better than the GPU at certain applications for inference. And because the inferencing opportunity is just so big, we talked about it being measured in the trillions of dollars. There's no way that one particular solution can serve that entire opportunity.
As this large language model scaled, you could no longer fit all the models in a single chip, right? You needed a server holding many chips, and that was also not enough. You had to build a whole rack and stack many servers together, and that is what is required. This rack became the new unit of compute. So what happened is we needed products like Jetstream to then address the second bottleneck, because now once you solve the compute memory bottleneck, it becomes a problem of compute IO bottlenecks, right? You need to be able to communicate between these servers, and that is what Jetstream solved, and we had to build out a rack solution to solve that particular problem.
Mhm. So, Sid, India is becoming a major AI and tech hub. There's a lot of focus on AI in government statements in the industry. What role do you see Dmatrix playing in the India AI ecosystem as we unfold in the next few years?
We started our journey in India almost 4 years ago now, right? So we've been this is this is pre-chat GPT when everything went viral, right? So we've been pretty committed to wanting to do something in India, given our roots back in India. So we obviously, the first thing we did was a presence, right? To have a presence there, because that's the best way to really understand what's really going on. And you're talking to the talent on the ground. They are telling us what different things that they're working on, and that allows us to really get an inside view into the key trends and the key strengths of India. So there's just so much opportunity. There is just so much opportunity because everything is new. There are no rules. That really, this is a phenomenal opportunity for India to come in. There is an opportunity for us to work with India to enable India to make it like world class when it comes to this new age of inference that we are entering, because that's another new thing, right? We are moving from training to inference. This is another opportunity for India to take the lead as we enter the age of inference. How quickly can we deploy inferencing infrastructure and then have applications and models built around that infrastructure to take a lead globally, right? And that's really the opportunity that we would love to help India with. What we call low latency inference is all the rage, right? Low latency meaning very high speed inference, and the reason that is really taking off is because if you are interacting with AI, you want that experience to be truly interactive, right? You don't want to have to prompt an AI model, have to wait tens of minutes before the model gets back to you, and then you come back and you may not like the response, and you try again, and then you go back and have a cup of coffee, and then that's not a great experience, right? You
Yeah.
want to be interacting with AI, truly interacting. You prompt the model responds. You prompt in real time, it responds back, and that makes the experience really worthwhile. And that requires low latency computing. And Dmatrix solutions have been built for low latency computing from the get-go.
So we have come up with this new way of building 3D silicon, right, where we can increase the capacity by 16x compared to the previous set of technologies we had. So in the previous set of technologies, which is a current way of doing things, you package chips in a 2D manner. Here we stack like skyscraper. You stack multiple levels of chips, compute and memory together. So the connections are much shorter. We can increase the capacity. There's many challenges, but we have proof of concept products already out in our labs, and we are productizing that. That'll keep Dmatrix on a sustained path for the next few years. Most of the talent that India has is easily applicable to this. It just
Mhm.
hasn't been in the past, or as much in the past, but it's changing every day. There's more people doing design, doing verification, doing chip design, and as this AI inference takes over, like Sid said, if we can unlock all of this talent to work on this, the possibilities are endless.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's a fantastic note to end on. Opportunities are endless. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Asutosh. Yeah.